Well, I've been expecting this market to go down for quite a while. But as you know, most Americans are clueless. This is going to be the biggest crash in world history. So Adam, as the old guys, and using your metaphor of Yankee Stadium, filling up with a magic eyedropper, one drop at a time, when do the people in the stands find out it's too late?
Depending on how you calculate the volume of the stadium, the magic eyedropper that you squeeze out one drop and it doubles in size every minute. It's something like 50 minutes, point at which the people can see the field beginning to fill up with water and notice that there's going to be a problem. It's at 45 minutes, so only 5 minutes to go, that just the infield is covered by 3 feet of water. And you go from just being able to see a little of it to the entire thing being filled up in just 5 minutes. And the whole point of that is by the time you can actually see the problem, it's way too late to actually avoid it. At that point, your choices are really just about how you're going to manage this thing that's about to slam into you.
So being the old guys, the story is always the same. They all say the same thing. This time it's different. This is the new economy. So Adam, as the old guys, and using your metaphor of Yankee Stadium, filling up with a magic eyedropper, how many minutes are left?
In terms of when we're going to have to deal with the repercussions of the tremendous and excessive amount of debts that we've built up in the system, we pulled so much of tomorrow's prosperity into today, stealing it from future generations. We've been trying to avoid those repercussions over the past many decades by money printing and kicking the can as far as we can financially. I think we're in those final 5 minutes. Now, is it going to be 2 years or 10 years? It's probably going to be, I would say, maybe a little closer to 10 than 2, but it could be anywhere in that window. At the end of the day, what's going to happen is going to be a default on our obligations. And the question is are we going to default because we're just going to let the debts collapse, which was the deflationary austerity side of things? Or are we going to inflate our way out by just printing so much money to meet the debt obligations, we just kill the currency? If you had to force me to choose between one of those two, I would pick the latter.
We're down to the last 4 minutes. The question is, are you going to keep doing the same thing? I think that's our question today.
The people that actually crunch the data, use history as a guidepost, and are capable of empirical thought in terms of projecting our current trajectory out, it's pretty hard for them not to come to a similar conclusion at the end of the day.
That gives somebody else some other ideas how bad this is. We are just coming out of the longest bull run in history, 11 years. Started in 2011. And in 2011, I made the biggest fortunes of my life because that was the MBS, mortgage-backed securities, and the CDO crashes, the real estate crashed. And I backed up the truck and I borrowed $300 million to buy the best real estate all across the Southwest. Now, there's a billion ways to go to heaven. Living debt-free is not one of them. But this is the point I want to make, is that I'm watching all these young guys, they entered the longest bull market in history. They've never seen a crash. And this is going to be the biggest crash in world history. People say, don't fight the Fed and all this. Well, my question to everybody is this: can the Fed print oil? Can the Fed print gas? Can it print food? But everybody sits there and they've been brainwashed by Wall Street to go, do as the Fed tells you to do. Well, you gotta be kidding me. Why would you listen to them? I call them liars.
If you look at the track record of the Fed as a forecasting agency, they're almost perfect in their record of being inaccurate. We're in the current state we're in right now because of policy errors. They're in the process of making another one, which is tightening extremely into a fast-flowing economy. Just like they eventually created the inflation they were looking for, but just got way too much of it, I think they're going to get the same demand destruction they're looking for, just way too much of it again.
I remember Volcker saying he's going to crush, so he raised interest rate. So Powell is now channeling the spirit of Volcker. And when Volcker crushed inflation, debt to GDP was 30%. And today it's 125% if you believe the numbers. So if he channels Volcker, and the other thing about history will tell you this: there's never been a soft landing. It's more Fed talk.
Does Powell have the backbone to be a Volcker here? Because with so much debt out there right now, the system can't take higher rates the way that it could back when Volcker was doing this. And so you're really putting the entire stability of the entire system at risk here.
We're entrepreneurs. We start businesses. We own businesses. In this market crash, I've made more money in the last 3 years in my whole life. And so that's what I want to talk about with you today, is that there's other ways of looking at investing. I own no stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. I do not touch paper. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I think people have been brainwashed by the Fed, the Treasury. Go to school, get a job, pay your taxes, get a high-paying job, and invest for the long term in a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. It was in 1974 when I came back from Vietnam, a two-tour Marine helicopter pilot. I saw communism at work. It was not pretty. And I come back in 1974, they passed ERISA. ERISA stands for 401k right now, or IRA. And I went, oh my God, they're funneling my generation, the boomers, into the stock market. And they don't know anything about money. And in 1974, the biggest exodus, Adam, was school teachers suddenly becoming financial planners. I watched it in horror. That's the poor leading the blind. And today we have baby boomers who are hoping the stock market stays up in their 401k just as Social Security goes bust. You think that's an accident? But today I listen to this and I go, oh my God, how can we be that stupid? Because we went to school, we did as we're told. Don't fight the Fed, do as the Fed tells you. Invest for the long term on a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. And don't worry, Powell is now channeling Volcker. When the debt to GDP is 120%, you gotta be kidding me. So when they were dropping the interest rates, I thought I died and went to heaven, because I buy apartment houses. I own 13,000 apartment houses. Every time the Fed dropped the interest rates, it jacked the value of my properties up, but I also improved the properties and I refinance out. So today I own no money in any of my properties. 13,000 units, all throwing cash.
So a big factor of what you look for in an investment is cash flow.
Cash flow, positive. It's also called an infinite return. But the other thing too is Rich Dad is a brand now. And I got hammered by the New York Times. Came out 25 years ago. I got hammered. So you don't know what you're talking about. I said, maybe you don't. Well, I have a master's degree, I have a PhD. I said, that's what I mean. Because Rich Dad never went to school. But my poor dad was a PhD, which stood for poor, helpless, and desperate. And he was in charge of labor unions. He was pro-tax. He was pro-tax to rich. You know what I mean? I'm listening to this and going, my family, oh my God. So in 1965, I leave Hawaii, go to school in New York, and my economics teacher is a West Point graduate who flew B-17s in World War II. And instead of having us read Malthus and Ricardo and Malthus, he had us read Marx, Stalin, and Mao. And the theory at military school is know your enemy. And so that was 1965, 1966 was my first trip to Vietnam. I'm carrying bombs to Vietnam on a victory ship sailing out of San Francisco Harbor. And then I saw communism firsthand. I'm like, oh my God, I could see the future. In 1930, the Frankfurt School out of Germany, which is Marx's institution, sent teachers to Columbia University's Teachers College in 1930. That was stage one of communism. And then they had to influence our academics first. And so when I came back from Vietnam, this time I was a Marine pilot and I was flying gunships in Vietnam. I was greeted at Norton Air Force Base, spit on, hit with eggs, all these Woodstock generation hippies. I said, man alive, I fought for you guys. And I lost so many friends, and we're all Marine. The saddest days of my life is standing on the deck of my aircraft carrier, and my friends don't come back. You never see them again. Their aircrafts are shot down. They're still MIA. And I get spit on, hit by eggs and all this stuff. But that woke me up, so I started studying more. What is happening in America? So as I said, I use debt now to get rich, and then I invest in hard assets. My point of view here is, ladies and gentlemen, I would question what you've been taught from school. That's all I'm saying.